The Kremlin's response to the American military strikes was not diplomatic. It was not economic. It was a cold and deliberate act of global military escalation designed to hold the entire planet hostage. In a televised address from a secure command bunkers deep beneath Moscow, a visibly enraged but icily calm Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that he had ordered all elements of Russia's nuclear and strategic missile forces to their highest possible state of combat readiness. He framed the American action as a terrorist attack by a rogue state and an existential threat to the Russian Federation. He declared that Russia's response would be asymmetrical, global, and unavoidable if any further aggression was shown. This was not a bluff. Within minutes of the broadcast ending, intelligence agencies across the world began to detect the telltale signs of a nation preparing for the unthinkable. The American gambit to shock Moscow into de-escalation had failed catastrophically. Instead of folding, Putin had raised the stakes to the highest possible level, initiating a worldwide missile buildup and deployment that transformed the Ukrainian crisis into a global standoff on the razor's edge of nuclear annihilation. The world's collective breath was held as the machinery of Armageddon began to turn. The first and most terrifying move was the activation of Russia's strategic rocket force. This is the ultimate guarantor of Russian sovereignty, a sprawling network of hardened silos, mobile launchers, and secret command posts housing the nation's land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs. Russia has initiated an unprecedented worldwide missile deployment, positioning advanced nuclear-capable systems across 4 continents in direct response to U.S. military action. Satellite imagery confirms Iskander-M systems being installed in Venezuela, Laos Island, caliber cruise missiles arriving at Cam Ranh Bay in Vietnam, and S-500 batteries transported to Tartus, Syria, significantly expanding Russia's strike radius against NATO targets. The most provocative move involved the clandestine stationing of RS-24 Yars intercontinental ballistic missiles in Kaliningrad, placing Berlin and Paris within 7-minute warning zones. Defense Minister Andrei Belousov announced the reactivation of Soviet-era missile silos across Siberia, with construction crews photographed reinforcing Kosovinsky Mountains nuclear command complex. This global repositioning represents Russia's largest strategic weapons expansion since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard provided an immersive briefing to President Trump, showing satellites and signal intelligence that confirmed the unmistakable activity. The massive steel blast doors over ICBM silos in Siberia and the Ural Mountains were sliding open. Mobile ICBM launchers, the formidable Popol-M and Yar systems, which spend most of their time hidden in vast forests, were moving out of their garrisons and dispersing along remote, pre-planned routes, making them nearly impossible to target. The command and control network for these forces, known as the Perimeter System, or Dead Hands in the West, was reportedly brought to full operational status. This semi-automatic system is designed to ensure a retaliatory nuclear strike even if the entire Russian leadership is decapitated. This single act placed the cities of the United States and its allies in a nuclear crossfire, reducing the time for any decision to launch or retaliate from hours to mere minutes. The escalation was not limited to strategic nuclear weapons. In the European theater, Russia begins a massive and overt forward deployment of its tactical and theater range missile systems, creating a ring of fire around NATO eastern flank. The Russian exclave of Kaliningrad, a heavily militarized slice of territory wedged between Poland and Lithuania, became a focal point of this buildup. Convoys of Iskander-M short-range ballistic missile launchers were observed moving out of their barracks and taking up positions in open field. These missiles, capable of carrying both conventional and nuclear warheads, have a range that puts Warsaw, Berlin, and much of Scandinavia on immediate notice. Simultaneously, MiG-31K fighter jets stationed at Kaliningrad's airfield were seen being armed with Kinzhal air-launched hypersonic missiles. The Kinzhal, traveling at more than 10 times the speed of sound, is virtually unstoppable by any current NATO air defense system, and its deployment there was a clear message that key NATO command center, air base, and naval facilities were now held at immediate risk. In neighboring Belarus, which has become a de facto Russian military district, newly arrived Russian missile units will move to the border with Poland and Ukraine, creating a new axis of threat and forcing NATO planners to guard against a multi-front attack. Perhaps the most chilling element of the Russian buildup was the silent and largely invisible deployment of its naval assets. At the massive northern fleet bases on the Kola Peninsula near Murmansk, a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines slipped their moorings and disappeared into the frigid, dark water of the Barents Sea. This includes several of Russia's new Boray-class ballistic missile submarine, or SSBNS. Each one of these Leviathans carries 16 Bulava submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and each Bulava can carry multiple independently targetable nuclear warheads. Their mission was to vanish beneath the Arctic ice cap or deep into the North Atlantic, becoming an undetectable and invulnerable second strike force capable of obliterating any nation on Earth. Alongside them sail Russia's formidable Yasen-class guided missile submarine. These attack boats, quieter than many American submarines, are armed with a deadly combination of long-range caliber cruise missile and the new Zircon hypersonic cruise missile. Their task was to hunt American aircraft carrier strike groups and to position themselves off the coast of the United States, able to strike coastal cities and military bases with little to no warning. The U.S. Navy Atlantic Fleet was thrown into a frantic, high-stake game of cat and mouse, desperately trying to attract these submerged hunters before they could reach their launch position. The global nature of Putin's response became terrifyingly clear when a small Russian naval task force, led by a modern Admiral Gorshkov-class frigate, was detected moving at high speed across the Atlantic toward the Caribbean Sea. This was a deliberate and provocative move designed to echo the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. The frigate is armed with Zircon hypersonic missile, and its potential deployment near Venezuela or Cuba would bring the threat directly to America's doorstep, placing cities like Miami and New Orleans, as well as critical infrastructure like the port of Houston, within range of unstoppable weapons. The move sent shockwaves through the economic centers of the U.S. government. Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent and Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick convened emergency meeting with leaders of the shipping and insurance industry. The presence of such a threat in the Gulf of Mexico could paralyze commercial shipping, skyrocket insurance rate, and send the price of oil into the stratosphere, threatening to trigger a global economic recession. This single naval deployment demonstrated that Russia was prepared to wage war on all fronts, military and economic, bringing the conflict to the American homeland in a way not seen in generations. The Russian buildup extended to the harshest and most remote corner of the globe. In the high north, Russia's string of newly reopened and heavily fortified Arctic military bases were placed on their highest alert. These bases, stretching from the Kola Peninsula to the Bering Strait, were bristling with advanced S-400 air defense system and Bastion P coastal defense cruise missile. This created a formidable anti-access area denial bubble across Russia's northern frontier, threatening NATO's northern flank and putting vital American early warning radar site in Alaska and Canada at risk. Secretary of the Interior Douglas Burgum, whose department oversees vast tract of federal land in Alaska, found his portfolio suddenly on the front line of a global military confrontation. In the Pacific, the Russian fleet based in Vladivostok also surged from its port, submarine and surface warship moving to the Sea of Japan and the Northern Pacific, increasing the threat to Japan, a cornerstone of American security in Asia, and forcing the U.S. Pacific Fleet to divert resources to track them. This stretched the United States Navy incredibly thin, forcing it to manage a full-blown crisis in both the Atlantic and the Pacific simultaneously. The buildup was not confined to land and sea. In a move that threatened to cripple the entire modern world's infrastructure, Russia activated its peace and cyber warfare capabilities. The United States Space Force detected that Russian Noodle NT satellite or ASAT system were being prepared for potential launch. The threat of taking out American GPS satellites, which are essential for everything from military navigation and precision-guided munitions to civilian banking and logistics, represented a catastrophic escalation. An attack in space could blind the U.S. military and send the global economy into a tailspin. This was paired with a massive surge in Russian cyber activity. Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem reported to the president that Russian state-sponsored hacking groups were launching a barrage of probing attacks against American critical infrastructure, testing the defense of the power grid, financial systems, and transportation networks for weaknesses to be exploited in a future decisive attack. This global show of force from Moscow sent the Trump administration into a state of permanent crisis management. At the Pentagon, Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth responded in kind. He ordered the United States military to increase its own defense readiness condition, or DEFCON level. U.S. strategic assets were put into motion. B-2 Spirit stealth bombers were deployed to forward operating bases in Europe and the Pacific. The U.S. Navy's own ballistic missile submarine were ordered to sea, ensuring the survivability of America's nuclear deterrent. A frantic effort was underway to reinforce NATO's eastern flank with more troops, aircraft, and air defense systems to reassure terrified allies. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's jobs transformed from managing a crisis to trying to prevent a Holocaust. The phone lines between Western and Allied capitals were hot with mixture of fear and recrimination. Rubio's primary desperate mission was to reestablish a stable and reliable line of communication with Moscow. In a world where both sides had their fingers on the nuclear trigger, the greatest danger was a miscalculation, a technical glitch, or a false warning leading to an accidental apocalypse. He was trying to find an off-ramp from a highway to oblivion. The intelligence community was stretched to its breaking point. CIA Director John Ratcliffe and DNI Tulsi Gabbard were working around the clock, their agency sifting through a mountain of data trying to answer the impossible questions. Was the buildup purely a show of force, or was it a prelude to a genuine attack? What was Putin's state of mind? Was he rational, or had the American strike pushed him over the edge? Every piece of satellite imagery, every intercepted communication, every human intelligence report was scrutinized for clues to Russia's ultimate intention. The fate of the world now rested on the quality of their intelligence and the wisdom of the leaders who had to interpret it. President Trump's initial strike, intended as a powerful assertion of American resolve, had instead shattered the fragile stability of the world. Russia's response was not one of submission, but of massive global defiance. The planet was now caught in a superpower standoff more dangerous than any moment of the Cold War. The buildup was complete. The missiles were in position. The submarines were in the deep. The world waited in silent terror for the next move. Many of my listeners, like 70%, haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel. And so many of you don't even know that you haven't subscribed. And that is actually what makes the show going. It's almost like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask again and again, because it enables us to grow and grow and grow. And we're going for the long haul here. And listen, if this is your first time listening to World Global Conflict, you don't have to subscribe. You guys, your first ones on me. But if you have watched this show before, it's like you are freeloader now. So all I would ask you is, if you have seen the show before and you like it, help me, help my team here. Hit that subscribe and like button now. And we will continue to build this show for you, that I swear. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. That's all for me for today. I will see you soon. Bye for now.